Estate Agency X, the UK's #1 estate agency podcast discussing the future of estate agency, entrepreneurship and business with hosts Mark Burgess and Rob Brady.
Welcome to this episode of Estate Agency X. Today I'm talking to Darren and Susan Cope. We're going to dissect over 2 decades of them building a business that started as a small letting agency and has now grown into a full-service estate agency. We talk about some of the milestones that they came across by accident to grow the business and some of the things that they did on purpose and how they've just started to move the business down to another generation of their family and really focus in on what it takes to run a business as opposed to just building a letting agency. Okay, guys, girls, thanks for coming in. Just for the listeners, are you okay to just give a little bit of a background on yourselves, introduce yourselves, maybe what your roles are in the company, that sort of stuff?
Fine.
I'll start, yeah. Okay, so I'm Susan Cope. I'm the MD of Cope & Co. I've been in the industry for 25 years and seen lots and lots of changes.
I'm not sick of it yet, but you can't quite answer that, right? Okay.
Yeah, strangely enough, I'm husband, Darren Cope. Obviously, Cope & Co. Look after the sort of marketing side and the finance director as well.
And is it 25 years that the company's been going, or was it longer than that, or less than that?
It's longer than that. Prior to that, it was a very small business, but it was often a shoot off of an estate agency that was a franchise from a company originally set up in Newcastle. So
pretty much 25 years next year that we've been involved. So it's our 25th anniversary next year.
Wow. Okay. And we'll dig into it in a bit more detail, but at this point, one office that you've got, and you focus on both sales and lettings, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
We've got two offices, but one of them's permanently manned.
Right.
Most of the staff are in one location,
And the other one's for just a presence in an area.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, nice. So where I want to start it then, I guess, is if you, and you might not have done this before, so if you look back now, 25 years, some of the struggles that you've faced over that period of time, of course, you always have new struggles and you're always maybe trying to get somewhere else. But if you just reflect on where you are at the moment and how far you've come in that period of time, can you think of maybe a couple of things that, looking back now, were probably milestones that you didn't know were going to perhaps have quite as big an impact as they have ended up having in the business? But looking back now, you sort of think, actually, yeah, that was probably a big thing for us.
The first big thing for me was when the deposit legislation came in. It literally came in overnight. It was still being written on the 6th of April, and the 7th of April, the date it came in, was Good Friday. So all the solicitors were shut. You couldn't get any tenancy agreements or anything checked, and you'd got people moving in. And that was the first real piece of legislation change that I'd come across in sort of 8-9 years.
Yeah, I remember you saying to me after we sorted it all, you said if we can negotiate that, we can negotiate anything, because it was the timing was just incredible.
Yeah.
Typical government.
And that was a big worry, obviously, at the time.
Well, it was just a big change, and when you've been doing it, I'd been doing it probably 7 or 8 years at that point, and nothing had really changed other than what we were bringing, processes and things we were developing ourselves.
Yeah.
But that was the first piece of big legislation that was forced upon us. Yeah.
And what about from a point of view of, like, that's a challenge that you had to get through.
Yeah.
What about from the point of view of, like, the growth of the company from where it started to where you are today? Can you think of anything where you sort of think to yourself, like, I don't know, we weren't quite sure about it at the time because we didn't have a crystal ball, but looking back?
No, I think we've probably got 2 different answers to this.
Well, certainly looking back for me, I remember when we started right back in sort of 2000-ish. I think there were 5 letting agents in Derby. And I think at the last count, if you look on, well, if you Google it, I think there's
5.5 million.
And we sort of, when we took it on, it was a bit of a mess in terms of from the franchise, wasn't it? And I think looking back now, the rapid growth was insane, and nobody could do that now. We sort of went from 50 properties to 1,200 properties. It seems like in a blink of an eye, which is incredible. I know it's took a long time, but when I look back and see that we're managing 1,250 properties, I sometimes I can't get my head around it. So it's when you take stock and look back and see where you've come from, that it still baffles me now.
Yeah. On that road from 50 properties to 1,200, like something changed. Something must have changed somewhere, like along the road, like in the sense that, you know, I'm guessing like when you took on the franchise, right, at some point you decided to leave the franchise.
That was
right?
2007.
Like why? Why leave the franchise?
Yeah, 2007. We outgrew the franchise, and we.
What were you doing that you made you think to yourself like, you're sort of behind us? Like
whether it was the speed of the growth, we were taking properties on and taking landlords on, and they couldn't cope with it at their end. But it was 2007 when we actually bought it out. We remortgaged our house.
Wow.
To
buy the shares. I mean, that must have been scary to do, because the easy thing would have just been to sit in the franchise, right?
Well, I think the thing was Darren was an accountant for the estate agents, and they'd got the franchise for the letting agency.
Yeah.
And they just asked me to go and run it. Or no, to start off with me, I was overseeing the financial side of the buyout of the franchise. So I did that, couldn't sit and kind of listen to what was going on in the office. So got too involved in that, and then they asked me to stay. So with a year-old baby. So the franchise was bought out before we started, but then we bought it off the directors of the estate agency in 2007. So I think the growth for me was gradual. It was like all guns blazing, 12-hour days, whatever it took to grow it, and to make it work. Because, like Darren's just said, we just remortgaged a house.
Had everything on the.
I just always wanted my own business,
right?
And at the time, I didn't really care what it was. And this sort of came along. I'm sure a lot of people sit here and say they fell into a estate agency by accident. It seems to be a bit of a thing.
Yeah.
But we sort of did. But when we got the opportunity to buy it, I remember we sat there and had a conversation, didn't we? We remortgaged the house and we paid £168,791 for the shares, 2007. And that was the point where you think, right, it's all ours now. And we still had the same attitude before, but it was like, this is it. We need to really make this happen now, because we were up to our eyeballs in debt at the time, weren't we? But it was what we wanted to do, so it couldn't fail.
The first time that I remember speaking to you guys was on a Zoom call, and it felt different when I spoke to you guys to when I speak to most estate agents, in the sense that by that point, when would that have been, do you think? 2020 maybe, something like that?
Yeah,
somewhere around there.
4 or 5 years ago.
By the time you'd reached that point, something had happened for you guys whereby the conversation I was having with you was like, there wasn't a lot of stuff that I needed to explain. You had already figured out that you were running a business, if that makes sense, as opposed to not running an estate agency, but you were looking at how is this going to work in terms of helping my business, rather than what is this going to do in my everyday job as an estate agent, if that makes sense. So do you think you'd always been like that, or do you think that at some point over the course of the time between remortgaging the house and us having that conversation, you'd slowly moved yourself sort of out of the business and onto the business in some way, or did you just always looked at it like that?
I think my background being in finance and being the management accountant for the estate agency for 7 or 8 years sort of gave me a good grounding on what happens behind the scenes, if you like, not just what happens on the sort of shop floor. So I think we'd already got a little bit of what's necessary, but you've obviously got to get all the front end right as well.
Yeah.
And I always had the idea I just wanted to be better than everybody else. I just wanted to be different and disrupt the market, if you like, and do something a bit that normal estate agents didn't do, which I think we obviously did in some way, shape or form to get to sort of where we are now. And when we only started the sort of sales side about 18 months ago, and that's gone crazy as well. So you sort of like to think you're doing something right with obviously the help of your technology, the help of, and it's having that mindset that you've always got to keep changing and innovating and
keep
stuff.
learning it.
Yeah.
Usually in a partnership like this, like you'll be familiar with this, Darren, from some of the work that we did on 18 cores and stuff and traction. And usually in a partnership like this, you've got integrator and visionary. For people that aren't familiar with it, you've got usually one person that great at thinking up ideas. They're looking at the future, but very poor at implementing those ideas. And you've got somebody that's like not too fussed about thinking up ideas for the future, but absolutely phenomenal at implementing stuff. Would you say you two fall into those two categories, or not really?
Yes.
Am I taking a guess at like integrator, visionary?
Yeah.
I am no integrator at all, and I'm so glad we've
stays in his lane. He's told regularly.
I'm so glad we've got a daughter involved now. She's operations director at the moment, and she's probably more organised than both of us. So, but yeah, at the time when she wasn't involved, definitely,
You wanted 1,200 properties.
I could implement something for a week, and then it sort of went off.
I put the processes in to make sure it happened.
It's such a great combination, though, don't you think? Like, even though you at the time when you started the business, traction hadn't even been written, and obviously we'd never spoken about it, but it happened anyway. And now you can like actually sort of articulate it because someone has written it in a book. But it's such a great combination, don't you think? Often I meet two very driven directors of a company, usually without, wanting to bring sexism into it, usually maybe two young males, very driven, like, and very similar, slight differences, but you can sort of see like there's going to be some problems for you guys because like you both want to be running the company, if that makes sense. And like somehow, I have it with my wife, similar to you guys, like somehow you have to remove egos out of this and look at the company as a separate thing. And our job is to make the company successful. Like it doesn't really matter if you're called CEO and you're called COO and you're called MD and who gives a shit? No, basically we need to stay in our lane. For ages, yeah. And it's so many. I feel like so many partnerships miss that. They just sort of they look at all the benefits of like, it'd be nice to not be on my own. We could do this together. We could split the funding. We could split the problems. But you can potentially end up in a situation whereby if there's no one, if you don't know your roles, you're going to sit in a meeting all day and just go around and around in circles arguing about nothing.
Yeah.
But don't you think that's if you're somebody who wants a business partner in a business, you tend to look for somebody who's similar, somebody who's you feel like you need somebody as driven as you are, who thinks the same way as you do, who's got the same ideas you do. So you go out your way to find somebody that's sort of like you. We were married before we took the business on.
Yeah.
So we'd sort of got that. I'm not saying it's marriage is like business, but we knew where we are within each other's relationship.
You wanted to be together for a reason already.
You got that partnership, which wasn't necessarily a business partnership, and I think that was probably easier to diversify into your separate roles. Yeah. Where two partners who are looking for a business partner look for a business partner, and it's sometimes, as you've just said, sometimes they're too similar.
I suppose as well, like, a lot of people say to me, like, you must be mad to work with your wife, or she must be mad to work with me. And I'm sure you get the same.
Yeah.
But weirdly, it's funny, isn't it? Because going back to that analogy, like, I've had business partners in the past, and they're almost like, in a way, they're kind of like my employees and I'm like their employee. And we found ourselves sometimes criticizing each other in that way. Like, I don't think you're doing this job properly, and I don't think and they'd say the same, and no one's got a hierarchy over the other, and you go around in circles. But when it's your wife or your husband, like, you can just cut that shit straight out, can't you? It's like, Don't be talking to me like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's good in one way, but it's not in another, because you don't have the hierarchy. You have the job titles, which you never really look at, do we? It's just for your hierarchy sheet at work.
Yeah, your organisation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no, there's a lot of things conversations that you can have in a different kind of way than you probably would if you were a board of directors. Yeah, exactly.
I remember having a conversation with Hayley once where my whole leadership style changed in this one conversation. She had been working in global banks, head of global legal, assistant to head of global legals, that sort of stuff, like much higher, much more important jobs than my little shitty company that she came to work in at the time. And she came there and she was sort of like, what shall I do? And I said, I've got this project you can work on if you want. And she done that for me. And then a few weeks later, because I'm not that organised, I thought, what happened with that project? And I said to her, like, what happened with that thing you were doing? She was like, yeah, I did it all. And I was like, oh, but you never showed me any of it. And she was like, oh, okay, here it all is. And I looked through it all like a school teacher and went, yeah, I wouldn't have done it like that. And she went, no, well, why don't you fucking do it yourself? And I suddenly realised, like, that's what everybody would have liked to have said. She could actually say it, but suddenly it was like, shit, like, either delegate it and let the person do their thing, or do it yourself.
Yeah.
But don't do a mixture of the two. Don't delegate it and then tell the person they should have done it like this, because they'll just go away thinking, like, I'm not going to do anything in future unless basically you tell me to. And I realised in that moment that I had a team of people that were like that every slightly big problem, they would come to me, and I'd made it that way. Even though I was complaining about it, I'd made a culture whereby they're scared, you know. So a good lesson, I think, that I learned, and only because she could talk to me in that way. So now we've got another generation involved, right? You've got your daughter, your son, they're involved in the business, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you've started Sales.
Yeah.
And originally, Sales was going to start as a different brand. Is that right?
Yes.
Cope and Co was professional properties for 23 of the 25 years. And we wanted to get into the sales market. Professional properties have been a letting agent in and around Derby for all that time.
Mm.
But the name doesn't lend itself.
Didn't have the same. The name didn't.
A bit too administrative.
Yeah, the professional it's a letting agent. What you're doing sales.
Right.
So 1st of November last year, we thought, sod it, let's just.
Well, we didn't quite think sod it.
Well, we did, and we'd also acquired another estate agent in April 22. So effectively, we got 3 brands running.
Yeah,
and it just got too much.
And I'm interested in that story because, you know, I could obviously see that happening because you have software with us, but I never really got into the conversations with you about it. So you've got these 3 brands running. One of them, you've acquired the company and you don't want to, I'm guessing, you correct me if I'm wrong, you don't want to touch the brand too soon because it's one of the reasons you bought it.
Yeah.
You've got professional properties, which is obviously all just running nicely. So we don't want to mess with that. And then what's the 3rd brand?
It was James Cope Homes.
Because that's where you
because that's where James
started,
came in, and that's where
started Sales.
We started it, yeah.
And had you started that before you made the acquisition, or
yeah,
right? So we'd started this, then we made an acquisition. Now we've got 3 going, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people that haven't ever done that would think, wonderful, we've got 3 businesses now. But where does it start to drain on your resources, and where do you start thinking like this is the mess?
Yeah.
How does that? What started happening?
Well, obviously, from your point of view, we had 3 life cycles.
Yeah.
3 CRMs.
3 Rightmove accounts.
3 Rightmove accounts. 3 sets of accounts to do at the end of the year. 3 of everything, and it's hard enough to do everything right on one company in terms of your marketing, your sales, and your strategy, and all that sort of thing. Trying to replicate it 3 times with 3 different brands.
3 social media.
Just a nightmare.
Yeah.
I was like, even something as silly as that. So we just decided mid 2023 to just put it all under Cope and Co.
Yeah.
And it wasn't some way of getting our name above our door and thinking that's it, we've done everything now.
No,
we just thought it said everything about what we are, especially with the kids being involved, because the four of us are directors of the business, and it just seemed the sensible way to go.
And now, in hindsight, was it all good? I mean, like, because
Yeah.
there would have been some. I'm guessing there would have been some worries about doing that. You've got Professional Properties, been around a long time. This other brand we've bought, like, you know, James has just started getting this other one established. Like, but now in hindsight, for someone who maybe hasn't made that jump, did it worked out okay? Like, what was you worried about that you needn't have been?
All of it, really.
Yours was losing the Professional Properties name.
Yeah, yeah, massively. But didn't make any difference whatsoever because I'd been at the forefront of the business for so long. You just needed to reassure people that nothing was changed. We had a PR company come in and run some articles for us in the local press, and just to explain what was happening and why we were doing what we were doing.
Yeah, just get ahead of it before people were asking you, right?
Yeah, and it went as seamless as it could have done, really.
Like the little things, like the phone message when people called was, "Hi, you're through to Cope and Co, formerly Professional Properties, for a few months." And then you took it off. So you just tried to keep the link going for a few months, until people got used to it,
so that people didn't think they were trying to in the wrong place. What they were looking
once
for.
It happened, management wise, it was just so much easier.
Yeah, I bet. And there's no regret on that side of
no,
things.
not at all.
Into one brand. Do you think that bringing everything into one brand will, I mean, obviously you do, because otherwise you wouldn't have bothered doing it. So I'm just trying to think of the best way of wording this. I was going to say, do you think bringing everything into one brand will help with sales? But obviously if you didn't think it was going to help with sales, you wouldn't have done it. But your concern in the beginning of Professional Properties is known as a letting agent. How are you thinking that you won't end up in a situation whereby now Cope and Co is known as a letting agent? Does that make sense? What I'm saying, like, you know, because you could just switch it all over, and before you know it, Cope and Co is now known as a letting agent, and you know, so have you sort of thought like, no, we'll do, I don't know, is there any plan on that side?
Well, no, not really, Mark, because James is going to overtake the world with his estate agency.
Right,
so
course,
no, and it is doing really well, and he'd got a vision of what he wanted the estate agency side to look at. So it was personal. That was why it was his name. It was a personal service. It was him you were dealing with. But that soon becomes impossible to actually do when you've start getting numbers involved.
Yeah.
So he has got other people working with him now, and they're all doing a great job. And they're about to have the best month.
Awesome.
That they've ever had. So it's obviously going in the right direction. So no, I haven't really got any concerns about that. It was always a concern with Professional Properties, and we dabbled in it before because as you got landlords leaving the market, you had loads in 2008, 2009 when the sort of everything crashed. Then the property market crashed, and whilst our staunch landlords did try and sell their properties with us, the name still never really lent itself. And over the years, it's become, I felt, more and more outdated. So it's just gave everything a lift and a freshen up, I think.
And sort of going back to your original question, when we changed the brand to Cope & Co. 1st of November last year, we already had a sales pipeline through James Cope Homes. So it wasn't like, they do our lettings and they start doing sales. It was a lettings and a sales agent when it launched, which was a little bit easier to sort of...
And the other business had got sales as well, hadn't it?
And I guess, like you said, you did PR and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I guess you would have touched on it in the messages that you were putting out, that sales and lettings are coming together.
And we've always told everybody that, you know, it's a family-run business. So it was the same people. Everybody's called Cope, which obviously helps. So I don't think the change was that massive for everybody.
Yeah. I've got an interesting question for you. Like I said at the beginning, before the camera started rolling, I'm not looking for some form of testimonial, but I'm just interested in this. Like, we started this accelerator program last year, whereby my thinking on it was that there's maybe slightly different to you, but there's an awful lot of estate agents out there that were estate agents and then opened their own estate agency, but haven't necessarily put certain things in place to run a business. And we started this accelerator program, and you guys came on it because obviously you know the business is moving generations now, and you want a different structure and all that sort of stuff. So I'm just interested, like, we're nearly at the end of that year now. Is there something in your head that sort of stands out as something that you have learned and implemented from doing that, whereby you think, shit, I wish I'd fucking known this 10 years ago?
How long you got?
Yeah.
Go for it. I mean, like I say, it's not a testimonial. I'm just useful stuff to somebody that's maybe listening.
It's not. I mean, the first one we did was the traction with Julia, which was mind blowing. And yeah, I wish I'd have known that.
In what sense?
Just
what problem did it solve that you think I wish I'd known that, because I would have been able to solve, I don't know. Just
sort of compartmentalizing different things, the way you look at the figures, the way you run the meetings, just the way you're doing stuff, from somebody who's an obvious expert telling you how they've done it and how it's worked for other people and that sort of thing. And everybody needs that. You've got to have input from people that know what they're doing. You can't do everything, and that sort of blew my mind, as did Mariana a couple of months ago, in terms of the operations side of it as well. And if you'd have known both those things years ago, when we'd probably be a lot bigger than we are now. But you have to take it on board when it happens, although it does blow your brains.
So obviously, you know, it's a lot to take in. We do use a whole workshops and then homework and all that sort of stuff. But in a nutshell, if somebody's listening, what could you say from one of those sessions? You don't have to even necessarily put a major explanation behind it, but something where you think, if you haven't got this in your business, you need to figure out, honestly, look into it and figure it out, because it's worth figuring out.
From my side, the way my role within the business, the first one, which was the vision and traction, and having your core business, values, your core vision, focus, and mission, making sure everything works around those. And the one with Mariana about operations,
customer journey,
absolutely. Like, but if anybody is listening that does go on it, what I would suggest is, the day after you've come on the workshop, wipe your diary and make notes of everything. I use Trello board. So every little note is a little thing on the Trello board that you can move around the screen and put it in order, put it in priorities. And because if you don't do that the day after, you're all over the place. So that's just my advice.
And is there something that you've seen coming back from that session? What is it that you've seen, like? Because
I haven't been to any of them.
That's right. So it's been mainly yourself, James, Annie, and so seeing them come back. Sometimes what can happen is something gets lost in translation, and the person that didn't come is like, oh, another load of gumph. So what are you seeing coming back? No,
I think that for me, with them coming, and I was massively encouraging them to do it when we were talking about figures and time, how much coming down here to London.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, all three of them. But for me, it's been what it's given them, because it was something that I never had. So, you know, when I first started out, there was nobody talked to anybody else in the industry. You were all competitors. Everything was behind closed doors. Nobody knew what anybody else was doing. And it's just like sharing the knowledge. So I think for me, the way that James and Annie, particularly probably James, has sort of embraced and learned from what he'd done, what he's been taught here, because he didn't go to uni. Annie went to uni. So it's a different kind of learning to what he would have done before. And he's really embraced it and taken it on board. And I think he uses it every day. I mean, the meetings are much more structured. They're great, and we're moving them on. And we have our meeting, then we have a manager's meeting straight after. And everybody knows what they're there to do. Everybody knows what they're there to talk about, and we get it done. So
it's an amazing thing, isn't it? Where you suddenly, it seems so obvious that, like, if we ran our business business,
that's the really funny thing.
It is obvious.
You're on the train on the way home, and you're thinking, that's That's so fucking simple.
Yeah.
Why the hell?
Like some things you've actually been doing by accident anyway.
Yeah.
But you
But sometimes you need to be told by somebody who's up there that you actually respect, even though you don't know them, that it's obvious within 5 minutes that they know what they're talking about.
I've often said to people that are toying with the idea of coming on it, I've said, like, weirdly, one of the best things about it is it kind of removes the argument internally.
Yeah.
Because this person's just told you how to do it. We don't need to discuss it. They've told us this is the rules. Now all we need to do is put it in place.
Follow them.
Whereas, like, if I had come up with it, you know, my business partner might go like, well, I'm not sure I agree with that. You know, and round in circles we go. Whereas this is just so much simpler, isn't it? When someone goes, here you go, this is what you do, A, B, C.
The difficult thing is telling people secondhand.
Yeah.
And if anybody does decide to do it, bring us. I know it's money and everything, but bring as many of as you sort of senior management team, your decision makers as you can.
Yeah.
But trying to explain it the day after.
Yeah.
When you
how's
your day been? And I've been sort of saying that, and it's not coming out right.
No.
But
you'll all have picked different, and everybody picks different things up from it. So even though they've been in the room, all been in the same room, they'll all have pulled something different from it.
Yeah, it's true, because when you tell someone secondhand, you get to the gold too soon, don't you? Like, it took you 8 hours to discover, I'm going to be able to raise my fees to 1.75%. But someone says, how was your day? You're like, I'm going to put my fees up to 1.75%. You're like, whatever.
No way.
Yeah, that's it. You do, because you want to get to the end goal as soon as possible, but there's a process to get there, but you forget about all the process.
Yeah. I had a meeting the other day that it was an overnight meeting. Me and my CTO, we sat in for the day. We've planned out loads of stuff. We worked through the night. We come out the other day. The next day I went home and Hayley said, like, how did you get on? I was like, it was awesome. We built this entire product and then we deleted it. But it's fine. It's fine. It saved us like 6 months. But, you know, you've got to be in the room to see the benefit of it, haven't it? Because otherwise it's just like, what a waste of time. I love that. So, it's such a crazy thought, isn't it? That if we ran our business like a business, it'd be more successful. But instead, we're going to just muddle around.
And I do think there's a massive thing in, you know, like you said earlier, a lot of people work in a estate agency, then decide they can do it, that want to do it themselves, which is absolutely fine. But whereas we both probably got the financial background, because that's what we both started from school, so we understood the management accounts, P&L and everything else. There's so many people, like, you know, you'll look even on somewhere, you will get it with Life Cycle, and then they'll say, oh, it's expensive, I can't afford it. Right, well, what's your ROI? And they haven't got a clue, because they don't know what that, somebody even put, what is that? When I put that, you know, what's the return? What are you getting? What are you paying, and what are you getting back from it? Because it's for us. I mean, Life Cycle has been life changing.
In what way?
Just in terms of managing, because the inquiries that the sheer volume of inquiries we were getting through on the letting side was just unmanageable. Like, you know, and trying to sort through the good, the bad, and that. But you're sending the questionnaire out straight away. We've got all of that information from them. We're fact finding right from the outset before we've even got a chance to get into the office and look at it. We know who they are. We know what they want. And we know where we're going with it.
Because we don't take any phone calls from Rightmove. It basically goes.
But I guess you used to.
Oh yeah, you used
every
to.
Court,
but then when you start getting 15 inquiries on a lettings property, 15 a time. So our phone calls from Rightmove and the other portals go to an answer thing that basically sends them a text message to fill out the heads up property alerts and register on the Life Cycle system. So it's all done like that. So not having to take phone calls when you've got that many inquiries on a property is just unreal. And then, as you say, the next morning you come in and you sift through them and
But we were getting in on a Monday morning. They'd have 400 odd inquiries through from the portals over the weekend.
You can't give.
You're defeated before you've even started.
You can't possibly give a good service to everyone, can you?
No.
And I mean, obviously, we know that the landlord and the seller are our clients, but still, you can't just. Well,
they get straight through. I mean, obviously, they come straight through.
But even a tenant, like, you can't just ignore them.
No.
You've got to give a certain level of service, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, nice. Okay, that's interesting.
But that's been massive for it. No two ways about it. Yeah.
That's interesting, actually. Like, if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind just asking you some stuff about that. Like, we're getting near to the end of the podcast, but often I'll meet an agent And it's sometimes a little bit difficult with life cycle to explain it, because you can't really call it a CRM. I don't think that really does it justice. And the danger when you do call it a CRM is that people go, okay, so it does property management and this and this and this. No. And you wouldn't not want to call it a CRM, because otherwise they wouldn't realise they were going to move CRM, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So quite often we would find resistance with somebody who's got a company exactly like yours, because they would go, well, I don't get it. Like, I'm not going to move CRM if you haven't got property management in the system. And I'd be saying, well, it's a separate issue. I'm going to help you build and structure the company, bring you automations, help with the market and help win more business, build up the sales side. I will help on the letting side. But once somebody's actually accepted an offer, you're going to pass it over to a different department who's going to use a different piece of software.
Yeah.
And someone just cannot get their head, at that point they're out. They're like, no, I wouldn't want another piece of software. So how are you, what would you say to that person?
Well, obviously the biggest thing we've used it for is lettings.
Yeah.
So yeah, we don't go all the way through, but it's our total front end goes through life cycle. So we don't actually we use Auto. We don't even hit that until we've let the property.
Yeah.
So, and everything's done. But it's just, it manages it. If the property falls through and it comes back on, you've got all of the information of everybody else that, I mean, I know you've got people that have viewed, you've got everybody who's ever inquired about it all in one place, and very easy to see and very easy to sort of see where they are, who they are, what their circumstances are. So I think...
it's mad though, because like in their mind they're going to double up on work, and you're saying
actually, no, you're not doubling up on anything. Absolutely not.
In answer to your question, I don't think there is or will be a piece of software that will do everything.
No.
And the reason is because everything's so fast moving.
Yeah.
You can't. I mean, you're just about to release Lifecycle 5, and your good lords and your streets and your spectres, they're innovating all the time.
Yeah.
There's no way one business can put all that into one piece of software and keep it up to date. So that's why you use Lifecycle for what it is. And it's obviously, you use the word CRM, that to me means storing data. And that it doesn't just store data. It does store data, but it does so much more. And then when you've let the property, move it onto a system that's suited to tenancy management and property management. And then for inventories, use a system that's good at producing inventories. Don't try and just bang everything into one, because it won't work.
I guess maybe it comes back to that whole concept of, if you were an estate agent and then you opened an estate agency and you're just doing estate agency things and you just go and rolling with it, as opposed to you're looking at it like a business. And when you start looking at it like a business, like, you can start thinking about the objectives here. Like, the objective is to make money. So yes, you might use two bits of software, but that's a different department to this department. Surely we want the best piece of software for that department.
That's what I mean.
And the best piece of software. And if we both had the best piece of software, would we make more money? Yeah. So what's the problem? But it's the mindset, isn't it? Of like, well, yeah, I know, but this software only costs me and I get it all. And here I've got to have two. It's like, yeah.
And it's people understanding as well. I mean, we've always been sort of quite open to technology, and you know, I like to understand things. I like to know how it works, because that's how I can then fit it in. Right. Yeah. So I need to know how it works. I don't mean it goes straight over my head in actual reality, but I know how it all fits in. And once I've got that and can see how it's going to work and that there's going to be a benefit for it, then there isn't a problem. But I think if you've come into estate agency to be an estate agent and there's a danger that you're just carrying on what you've already learned, because it's learned behaviour.
Yeah.
So going back to your estate agent X and the life cycle thing, it's very innovative. You've got to get your head around it, but once you do, it's all a no-brainer. And actually, coming on and just sort of doing the learning with you, I think, you know, they'll see how to run the business, because that's what you've definitely shown James and Annie how to do that. So actually what you've done is reinforce everything that not everything, a lot of what we've got in place. We've learnt things as well.
I love that. It's great. It's great to hear, because like we recently put together, I spent some time putting together this thing called the Estate Agency Business Journey.
Yeah.
From all the years that I've spent talking to agents, you answer these 26 questions. It will tell you pretty much where you are and what your problems are and how you can solve it. And it's made me just start looking at Iceberg slightly differently. Yes, we have software. Yes, we have accelerator programs. Yes, we do websites. Yes, we do this. Yes, we do that. But actually, it's about getting to this end goal of excellence, whereby the business is making lots of money and you're not having to do all the work.
Yeah.
Everything else is kind of irrelevant, isn't it? Unless we're going towards this, why are we bothering?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And so we're looking at it going yeah, I mean, the software could help you, but the software would help you if you knew this. So maybe we should put that in place for people. And actually, a website should do this. So they should put that in place, and it will all lead to this same thing, rather than just, I don't know, this is a really great piece of technology, we should bring this in, but we don't know really how it's going to help us get to excellence, Sorry, Darren, you were going to say something.
Yeah, I think someone once said to me in the estate agency industry, people think you're an estate agent that does marketing, but you're not. You're a marketeer that does estate agency. And I think people forget how the business side sort of fits into everything. You can throw everything at getting instructions and selling houses and doing that, but if none of the other bits are in place, then you don't achieve anything.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
And it's the vision and traction, your operations, and getting all those building blocks and laying all the foundations. So the estate agency bit and doing all that is the sort of icing on the cake.
Love it. Brilliant. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for listening to this Estate Agency X podcast. Can you make sure that you're actually subscribed to this podcast channel if you liked the content? It helps us massively to get better guests, and it just helps us generally. So you might think you're subscribed, but just have a double check, whatever your podcast platform of preference is, that you're actually subscribed. And then that way we can continue to grow the channel and get better and better guests for you.